Samuel had felt this particular shade of invisible before. 63 years of living had taught him that people see clothes before they see souls, appearances before authenticity. What they didn't see, what they couldn't possibly know, was that the scuffed leather wallet in his back pocket contained a black card with no spending limit, and the simple farmer they were dismissing owned more land than some small countries, with a net worth that would make their jaws drop if they bothered to look past the mud on his boots. But Samuel wasn't here to prove anything to anyone. He was here because his granddaughter Emma was getting married tomorrow. And despite his profound discomfort with cities, concrete, and pretension, he'd walk through fire for that girl. "Can I help you?" The desk clerk's tone suggested she'd rather not. "Checking in. Reservation under Miller." She typed with 2 fingers, her acrylic nails clicking against the keyboard like tiny judgments. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is a very exclusive hotel. Are you sure you have a reservation?" Behind him, Samuel heard a man mutter to his companion, "Security's getting lax. They're letting anyone in now." Samuel pulled out his wallet, and the clerk's eyes widened, not at the black card, but at the worn leather held together with what appeared to be actual twine. "Sir, I'm going to need to see a valid credit card and ID." "Is there a problem here?" The manager appeared, summoned perhaps by some invisible signal that unwashed farmers were contaminating the atmosphere. "This gentleman claims to have a reservation," the clerk said, her inflection making "gentleman" sound like an accusation. The manager's eyes traveled from Samuel's boots to his weathered face, making calculations. "Sir, perhaps you're confused about which hotel—" "Presidential suite," Samuel said quietly. "Reserved for a week under Miller. My granddaughter's wedding is tomorrow at the Riverside venue." "The Miller wedding?" Something shifted in the manager's expression. The Miller wedding was the event of the season. Everyone knew about it. Emma Miller was marrying tech CEO James Donovan, and the guest list read like a who's who of American wealth and influence. "You're related to the Miller family?" "I'm Emma's grandfather." "I see." The manager didn't see at all. His confusion was almost comical. "And you're staying in the presidential suite? Unless you gave it away in the last 5 minutes." A small crowd had gathered, their entertainment barely concealed. Samuel heard someone whisper, probably a drunk who wandered in. "Call security." The manager gestured to someone. Within moments, 2 security guards materialized. "Gentlemen, would you mind escorting this person?" "Grandpa Sam!" The voice cut through the lobby like a bell. Emma burst through the revolving doors, radiant in jeans and a Columbia sweatshirt, her dark hair flying behind her. She threw her arms around Samuel, mud and all, with the unself-conscious love that had never changed since. She was 6 years old, and he'd let her drive his tractor in circles around the cornfield. "Thank God you're here. I was worried you might have changed your mind." She pulled back, eyes searching his face. "Did you have trouble finding the place?" "No trouble at all, sweetheart. Just checking in." Emma finally seemed to register the frozen tableau around them, the security guards, the manager's blanched face, the clerk's horrified expression. "Is something wrong?" "Miss Miller." The manager found his voice, and suddenly it was all oleaginous warmth. "We were just getting your grandfather situated. There seems to have been a small misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Emma's voice went dangerously quiet. She'd inherited her grandfather's gentle demeanor, but also his spine of steel. "What kind of misunderstanding involves security guards?" The silence was exquisite. Samuel touched Emma's arm gently. "It's fine, honey. They were just doing their job." "Their job doesn't include harassing my grandfather?" Emma turned to the crowd, her voice clear and carrying. "This man taught me that a person's worth has nothing to do with what they wear or drive or how they look. He's the kindest, most generous man I know. He built a free medical clinic for his county. He paid for 17 kids, college educations, kids whose parents worked his land and became family. When the flood came 3 years ago, he opened his home to 42 families and rebuilt the town's school with his own money. The woman with the fur coat had the grace to look ashamed. And you know what?" Emma continued. "He did all of that while living in the same farmhouse he grew up in, driving the same truck he's driven for 20 years, and wearing clothes that are comfortable and real and honest. Unlike most people in this lobby, he's never pretended to be something he's not." The manager was frantically typing. Samuel knew what was happening. Someone was finally Googling Samuel Miller farmer. The results would be illuminating. Samuel Miller, agricultural magnate, would probably be the kindest headline. Billionaire farmer was more accurate. Nation's largest private landowner was a title Samuel had never wanted but couldn't escape after his great-grandfather's farms, his father's savvy investments, and his own decades of quiet, empire building had accumulated into something almost embarrassing in its enormity. The manager's face went from white to gray to a peculiar shade of green. "Mr. Miller, I cannot apologize enough." "Don't apologize to him," Emma said sharply. "Apologize to every person you've ever judged by their appearance. Apologize for thinking wealth and worth are the same thing." Samuel squeezed his granddaughter's hand. "Em, it's okay." "It's not okay." Her eyes were bright with tears now. "You came here even though you hate cities. You're wearing a suit tomorrow even though it makes you uncomfortable. You're doing all of this for me and these people." Her voice broke. Samuel pulled her close. "Hey now, your happiness is worth any discomfort. Worth more than all the land in America." James, Emma's fiancé, arrived then, having clearly received an urgent text. He assessed the situation in seconds. Years of corporate boardrooms had given him that skill. But instead of asserting his CEO authority, he simply shook Samuel's hand. "Good to see you, Sam. Presidential suite still not good enough for you? We can kick someone out of the penthouse." Despite everything, Samuel smiled. James understood. That was why he'd given his blessing. The manager was still apologizing. Other guests were murmuring, some looking guilty, others defensive. The clerk had disappeared entirely, possibly to update her resume. But Samuel's attention was on the young bellhop who'd been standing quietly to the side, the one who'd whispered to his colleague when Samuel first walked in. Now the kid stepped forward, face scarlet. "Sir, I'm really sorry. My dad's a farmer. Small operation in Iowa. I sent him money last month because the harvest was bad and I'm up here trying to make enough to help keep the farm going. And I judged you the same way people judge him when he comes to town. I'm ashamed." Samuel looked at the young man, probably 22, 23, wearing a uniform that was too new, trying to make his way in an unforgiving city. "What's your name, son?" "Tyler, sir." "Tyler, you working your way through school?" "Yes, sir, NYU business degree." Samuel pulled out his worn wallet, that same wallet that had provoked such disdain minutes earlier, and removed a card. Not the black card, a different one, cream-colored with simple lettering. "My foundation gives scholarships to kids from farming families pursuing higher education. Send me your information. And tell your dad. I said the Millers from Georgia are rooting for the Iowa farmers." Tyler stared at the card, then at Samuel, his eyes suspiciously bright. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Say you'll remember that everyone has a story, including the folks who misjudged me today. They've probably got their own struggles, their own reasons for being the way they are." Emma hugged her grandfather again. "How are you so good?" Samuel chuckled. "I'm not good, honey. I've just lived long enough to learn that kindness costs nothing and pays everything. My daddy taught me that, working land that barely produced enough to eat. When things got better, when the money came, I remembered what it felt like to be dismissed, to be seen as less than. I never want to make anyone feel that way." The manager had comped the presidential suite, offered the penthouse, promised a fruit basket, and was still apologizing. Samuel waved it all away. Just treat people better. All people. The next person who walks through those doors in dirty clothes might be someone's beloved grandfather, or someone's father working 3 jobs, or someone's daughter who just came from volunteering at a shelter. Or they might just be someone trying to get by. All of them deserve respect. As they headed to the elevator, Samuel, Emma, James, and Tyler, who insisted on carrying the single battered duffel bag that contained everything, Samuel needed for a week, the lobby slowly resumed its normal rhythm. But something had shifted. The guests who'd witnessed the scene seemed different, softer somehow. The new desk clerk was smiling at an elderly man in a threadbare coat. The woman in the fur coat quietly slipped Tyler what looked like a generous tip. In the presidential suite, Emma finally let herself cry. "I hate that you had to go through that. Sweetheart, I've gone through worse." And honestly, Samuel looked out at the Manhattan skyline. All those towers of glass and steel, all that striving and proving and showing off. It reminded me why I'm proud of who you are. You could have married into money and forgotten where you came from. Instead, you're marrying a good man, staying true to yourself and standing up for what matters. That's worth more than all my land and all their marble lobbies. James put his arm around Emma. Your grandfather's pretty amazing. He really is. Samuel smiled. I'm just a farmer who got lucky and tried to do right by people. Nothing amazing about that, but it was amazing in its way. In a world that worships wealth but only when it's displayed, that values people based on appearances, that measures worth in designer labels and luxury cars, Samuel Miller had quietly built an empire while never forgetting what it felt like to have nothing. He'd used his wealth, not for hotels and yachts, but for clinics and scholarships, and rebuilding flooded towns. He'd worn his muddy boots into that lobby not to make a statement, but because he was comfortable being exactly who he was. And maybe that was the real wealth, not the land or the money, but the ability to stand in a room full of judgment and remain unchanged, to meet mockery with grace, to respond to cruelty with kindness, to see humanity in everyone, even those who couldn't yet see it in him. Tomorrow, Samuel would wear a suit and walk his granddaughter down the aisle. The guests would probably Google him and feel appropriately abashed. But tonight he ordered pizza, sat with Emma and James, and told stories about the farm, real stories about real life, about hard work and harder lessons, about failure and perseverance, about his late wife, who'd loved him in his dirty work clothes, and fancy moments equally, about what matters when everything else falls away. And in that hotel room high above a city that values all the wrong things, three people who understood what was truly important laughed together, loved each other, and proved that the richest life isn't measured in dollars. But in moments like these, honest, humble, and profoundly human,